We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? And I give the call to the member for Wannon.
My question is to the Minister for Immigration. The Albanese government, primarily under Minister Giles, has issued more than 2,900 visas to individuals from the Gaza war zone since the October 7 atrocity. Were all these individuals asked whether or not they have sympathies for Hamas, a listed terrorist organisation?
Give the call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. First of all, it's odd people thinking they can be in charge of national security when they can't even nominate for local government as a party. I explained yesterday the process and the involvement that ASIO has in terms of the process that we have, which was the same as what was used under the previous government.
Order. The member for Deakin. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the member for Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And my question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government creating jobs and setting up a future made in Australia? And how does this compare to previous approaches?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Watson for his question. Today's jobs figures do show a slight uptick in unemployment to 4.2%, reflecting, of course, the fact that these are difficult times for many Australians. But they also show that, once again, a new figure for the most jobs being created by any government in Australia's history since Federation. 989,000, Mr Speaker, as we approach the 1 million mark, which we hope to hit, of course, before the end of this year. Now, that compares with the first 2 years of other governments. Under the Abbott government, it is triple what was created in their first 2 years of just over 300,000 jobs, almost double the number that was created under the Turnbull government during their first 2 years, and the Morrison government, of course, saw a decrease of 66,000 jobs during their first 2 years. We are also seeing a record high participation rate of 67.1%, and importantly, a new record low gender pay gap of just 12.5%. Now, it was 14.1 when we were elected in May of 2022. We came to government with a commitment to help close the gender pay gap, and that's exactly what we are seeing. And that isn't a coincidence, Mr Speaker. We changed the Fair Work Act to make gender equity an objective of the work of the Fair Work Commission. We have banned pay secrecy clauses. We have modernised the bargaining system. We are enforcing transparent gender pay gap reporting. And of course, in feminised industries such as aged care and childcare, we have supported pay rises for those workers who kept our economy going during the pandemic, who deserve not just our thanks on an ongoing basis, but deserve a decent wage and conditions. And of course, Mr Speaker, I'm asked by the member for Robertson as well about a future made in Australia and future jobs. And that's why we're planning for the future, not satisfied with just dealing with the immediate challenges, but the future made in Australia, working with Jobs and Skills Australia to identify training opportunities, is about identifying those industries and those opportunities that can be seized in the future for future job growth, dealing with the immediate challenges whilst also having our eye on a positive and better future.
The call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. During question time yesterday, the Prime Minister stated that people applying for visas from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone were undergoing ASIO security assessments. Will the Prime Minister now confirm that this is not accurate?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'll refer to what the ASIO Director General himself has said. If they've been issued a visa, they've gone through the process. They referred to my organisation, and ASIO does its thing. It's a direct quote.
Order. No.
It is a direct quote from insiders on the 11th of August.
The member for Fisher will leave the chamber under 94A. We're not having this today. Far too much disorder in the chamber through the week. If it continues, there'll be a general warning issued. Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. That was a direct quote from Mr Burgess on the Insiders program. He went on to say, so for all immigration, including when you're balancing humanitarian needs, security checks are critically important. There are processes in place, and I can assure your audience that when things get referred to ASIO, we'll deal with them effectively. That's what he said. But he said more than that.
Order.
He has said
Leader
more
of the
than
Opposition
that,
has asked
Mr.
his question.
Speaker.
Order. The Leader of the Opposition has asked his question. I'm calling for order in the chamber. I want to listen carefully to make sure the Prime Minister is being directly relevant.
He also said this. After the 7th of, at the press conference that was held with myself, he said this. After the 7th of October, I warned that inflamed language could lead to inflamed community tensions. Unfortunately, this is what's playing out. This is really a matter for everyone, community leaders, politicians, the media. Watch your words, watch your actions. There is a direct correlation between inflamed language, inflamed tension and violence. Now, Mr Speaker, I would have thought there was no unifying moment more unifying in our nation than when we welcome Olympians home yesterday morning. That was a chance for the Leader of the Opposition to practice that smile that we've heard so much about. And yet he chose this moment of all moments to be divisive. A moment meant to be about champions, he made it about himself. The scarf stayed on, but the mask came off. He sows fear and he sows division. That's what he does. That's what he's done his entire political career, and that's what he continues to do.
The Prime Minister has concluded his answer. I'd like to hear from the member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What do today's jobs numbers tell us about the state of the economy? Why is the Albanese Labor government's economic plan so important, and what economic policies have been rejected?
Good call to the Treasurer.
Well, Speaker, the wonderful member for Dunkley cares about jobs and the cost of living, even if those opposite don't. Mr Speaker, even in a very soft economy, we are still creating tens of thousands of new jobs. And it's a tribute to our workers and to our employers that so many new jobs were created last month despite all of the economic challenges coming at us. 58,200 new jobs were created in July, and all of them were full-time. Almost 1 million jobs have been created on our watch, and that is a record. No government or Prime Minister has ever overseen more job creation in a single parliamentary term than this Prime Minister and his government. And as he said a moment ago, we do need to put these numbers in context. We do acknowledge that the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.2% in July, and we know that it was about 3.5% in the middle of last year. We know job ads have weakened 11 of the last 12 months as well. We anticipated this in our budget forecast, which expect our economy to slow because of higher interest rates and global economic uncertainty. Now, the reason that we have a rising unemployment rate and still creating new jobs is that participation is at a new record high as well. Now, all of this means that more Australians are working, more Australians are earning more, and more Australians are keeping more of what they earn. There are also numbers today which show average full-time workers are earning $159 more a week since we came to office, and the same taxpayer is paying $43 a week less tax. The gender pay gap is now the narrowest it has ever been at any stage, and this is welcome and deliberate, not accidental, Mr Speaker. Our objective is to get on top of inflation without smashing jobs or the economy, and today shows we are making progress. Almost 1 million jobs. Inflation's come off substantially. Wages growth has almost doubled. Gender pay gap at a record low. Tax cuts for every taxpayer. And we've still turned 2 big Liberal deficits into 2 big Labor surpluses. These are the dividends of our responsible economic management. And this is the major dividing line between those opposite and our side of the House. They desperately want higher unemployment, higher inflation, higher interest rates, lower wages and less help for people who are doing it tough in our communities. We are getting on with the job of getting on top of inflation without smashing jobs and without smashing the economy. And because of our efforts and on our watch, Mr Speaker, more people are working, more people are earning more and keeping more of what they earn. We see that in today's new numbers, despite the much slower growth and international uncertainty that we're seeing in our economy.
Give the call to the honourable member for Kennedy.
PM, as a Murray from Cloncurry, my brother cousins on their homelands cannot secure a freehold title deed nor a pastoral lease, yet both are available to every white fella. Wouldn't Monash professor Sarah Madison's colonial fantasy and WTO economist de Soto's mystery of capital provide powerful arguments for issuing title deeds and explaining why the life expectancy of Homelander First Australians is just 56. Why do those ignoring First Australians label Parliament racist for blocking Gazan refugees, yet ignore a similar blocking by Egypt, Jordan and Iran?
Order. There was a lot in there. Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
I thank the member for Kennedy for his question. One of my first experiences in this parliament as a very young fellow at the time was to be on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Affairs Committee with the member for Kennedy, and we travelled to his electorate extensively, and there I saw the relationship that we had with First Nations people in his community, and I know that he is very genuine about that commitment and about the need to close the gap and to provide economic opportunities. When it comes to pastoral leases, of course, and the interaction with native title, that is something that occurs at the state level rather than something that the Commonwealth has the capacity to change. But he's right to talk about the life expectancy of First Australians being so much lower than that of non-Indigenous Australians. That's a tragedy. That's something that's unacceptable. That's something that everyone in this parliament, across governments, current and past, have to accept responsibility for. And that's why we certainly need to do better. And that's why measures such as, I'm sure that the member would support, the changes that the former Indigenous Affairs Minister put in place to turn what essentially is a make work program into real jobs with real training and real skills for Indigenous Australians. And I've met with First Nations people from the members' electorate from just north of Curry very recently, from some of those remote communities, and heard from them firsthand about their desire to seek a better future for not just themselves but for their children. That's why as well education and TAFE and providing those opportunities and skills is so important as we move forward. I'm certainly willing to once again continue to work with the member for Kennedy, not just on these issues in his electorate but throughout the whole nation on how we deal with these challenges. It shouldn't be the case that anyone should be able to determine someone's opportunities and where they'll end up in life by the postcode in which they were born or the circumstances in which they were born. That's not the Australian way. But unfortunately, that gap remains far too great. I'll continue to engage constructively with the member for Kennedy, and I thank him for his question.
Give the call to the member for Pearce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Resources in Northern Australia. How will the Albanese Labor government's production tax incentive for critical minerals grow a new industry here in Australia? What are the barriers to delivering a future made in Australia? Thank you.
Give the call to the Minister for Resources and the Minister for Northern Australia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the remarkable member for Pearce for that question. The road to net zero runs through the Australian resources sector. Australia has all the critical minerals and rare earth elements the world needs to decarbonise. There are no solar panels, wind turbines or storage batteries without them. We have a generational opportunity to move beyond extracting to concentrating our valuable ore to create new critical minerals processing industry right here in Australia. The Albanese Labor government will encourage processing onshore through a 10% production tax incentives that will drive the creation and resilience of this new industry built on the traditional resources in this country of coal, gas and iron ore that are the cornerstone of our economy. The critical minerals industry faces challenges. We face market disruption, market manipulation, price fluctuations and supply chain disruptions that are also affecting our trading partners around the world. And these challenges will not disappear with wishful thinking. That's one barrier, but another major barrier to our growing critical minerals industry here in Australia are those opposite, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals and the Nationals in this House and in the other place have turned their back on the resources sector and have opposed our production tax incentive. So, what do they have, Mike? It's a very good question, Mr. Speaker. So we have the Shadow Treasurer reading off the opposition's East Coast script and the Leader of the Opposition here reading off the West Coast script. We really look forward to that WA package that might deliver us, indeed, a gold medal in all of backflips. Could put us up the table in the Olympics gold medal list. But what's happening here in Queensland, or there in Queensland, up there in Queensland, look like down there in Collie? But surely, maybe the member for Flynn could tell us a bit about it. Maybe he might feel differently about the production tax incentive. After all, Alpha HBA is starting Australia's first high-purity alumina processing facility in Gladstone and his electorate. Yesterday he spoke about the future made in Australia, but he spoke more about uranium than he did about critical minerals.
And the member for Hinkler will cease interjecting.
Queensland, as we all know, Mr. Speaker, as you know, is a great resources state. And in contrast to the member for Flynn and others, the Prime Minister and I visited Alpha HPA earlier this year to see their work. The member for Capricornia, what did she have to say about the production tax incentives? Well, absolutely nothing, of course. And what did the member for Leichhardt have to say about it? Despite having a tungsten mine in his electorate that wants to go to processing, we haven't even heard from him. The Queensland Resources Council are behind the production tax incentive. But I want to be very clear. What each and every member of the LNP in this House and in the Senate are doing people in your electorate out of jobs and of money. By not backing the production tax incentives, you are putting your own people behind.
The minister's time has concluded. When the House comes to order, we shall hear from the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said he was running exactly the same process in granting visas to those in the Gaza war zone as the previous government did when accepting people from Syria and Afghanistan. As the Prime Minister knows, that is not what happened under our government, where people were removed to third-party countries, attended face-to-face interviews, and some visas took up to 12 months to process. Will the Prime Minister apologise for misleading the House?
Give a call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the Deputy Leader for his question. We take the same advice from the same security agencies, even the same security personnel as the previous government. Now, we have confidence in our security agencies. If those opposite don't have confidence in those security agencies, they should say so. They should say so. We don't discuss the details of the methods that our agencies use to determine if someone is a national security risk, which is something that those people who've been on a National Security Committee know is the case. In 2017, then Minister, now Leader of the Opposition, issued an additional 12,000 visas to Syrian and Iraqi refugees. He indeed issued a media release that said this: Australia welcomed these people who can now make a fresh start and build a safe future, far from the horrors of the conflict. I encourage them to enjoy all that Australia has to offer. If those people want to suggest what the Deputy Leader of the Opposition occurred, that occurred when Kabul was being evacuated, then she must think that all of us have a very short memory. But the fact is that that is what he said. When we were in opposition, we backed the government. We backed the government. We didn't look for a way to divide the country. We didn't look for a way to undermine national security, because we know it is simply too important to play games with.
The member for Barker is now warned. Prime Minister will be heard in silence. Prime Minister has the call.
National security is too important for the sort of divisive politics that those opposite are trying to play here. They know that that's the case, but they simply don't care. For them, everything that happens is an opportunity to try to divide Australia at a time, in spite of the Director-General's very clear warnings about the climate that we are in, the very clear warnings, and his call for responsible political leadership. We're seeing anything but that from those opposite.
Before I call the member for Ben, I just want to hear from the Leader of the Opposition on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I appreciate your advice in relation to this matter. It's been brought to my attention that the Prime Minister, in quoting the Director-General of Security earlier, misquoted the Director-General. The Prime Minister said, and I quote, in his quote from Mr Burgess, "If they've been issued a visa, they've gone through the process, they're referred to my organisation and ASIO does its thing." Mr Burgess actually said on Insiders as follows, quote, "If they've been issued a visa, they've gone through the process. Part of the process is where criteria are hit, they're referred to my organisation and ASIO does its thing." There's quite a different import from the Prime Minister's interpretation, and I would ask you to invite the Prime Minister to correct the record, given this is the first available opportunity for him to do that.
Okay. So just that I'm clear, the Leader of the Opposition is claiming the ASIO Director was misquoted or some not. If the Prime Minister has made a statement and he believes it's incorrect, he has the ability to do that. Members don't normally intervene. I'll have to hear from the Leader of the House.
I'm sorry, I was just struggling to work out what standing order the point of order was on, because it just sounded like a speech.
Order. Members on my left. If people have an issue when something is being said, I just remind all members the time to do that is at the time. If you're taking a point of order, you believe someone is not being relevant, it's not after the case. But if any minister or member has made a statement, they have the ability to correct it, but I don't know what was exactly said here. So, the Prime Minister on the point of order.
I'm happy to respond on the point of order, Mr Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition has confirmed the accuracy of what I've said. What I have not done, Mr Speaker, is read out the entire Insiders transcript. If he wishes me to do so, I would do so. But I read out 3 different things.
Order. Members
that
on my
the
left.
Director-General of ASIO
Members on my
said.
left will cease interjecting. Just for clarity, no, we need to move on, but just for clarity, it places the Speaker in a difficult position when I don't have an exact copy of Hansard in front of me at the time. That's not normally the time to raise these issues. So just moving forward, if someone believes someone has said the wrong thing or misquoted, the time is not to do that in question time. It's perhaps best raised in another forum or directly at the end of question time. Further to the point of order.
Sorry to further delay you, Mr Speaker, but this is a very significant issue. The Prime Minister has had his attention drawn to a very serious matter. I raised it at the first point that I was made aware of it, so I couldn't raise the point of order at the conclusion of the Prime Minister's answer earlier. But I wasn't suggesting earlier that there was a deliberate misleading of the House. But I am saying to you now, Mr Speaker, that the attention of the Prime Minister's error has been drawn to the House. The Prime Minister has gone on.
Okay.
No, but I think this is an important point. The Prime Minister has gone on to deliberately mislead this House.
All right.
That is what has happened here. He has deliberately misled the House, and he should correct the record.
No.
Absolutely, he did. Absolutely.
Order, resume your seat. The Leader of the Opposition. The Leader of the Opposition will. The Leader of the Opposition will resume your seat. The Leader of the Opposition raised a point, which I allowed to the courtesy. The Prime Minister did respond to that regarding that matter. Order. 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 The Minister for the Environment will cease interjecting. We'll hear from the member for Bean.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. What action is the government taking to clean up the CFMEU, and what threatens to delay this action?
Give a call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. At around 3 o'clock today in the Senate, there will be a vote as to whether or not the legislation to intervene and to put administrators into the CFMEU gets dealt with in that House today. If it's carried, the impact of that legislation will be that the current leadership of the CFMEU is removed and an administrator is put in. The administrator will have the power to go person by person through the different office holders in the union and make sure that people are of proper character, and if they're not, remove them. They'll be able to look at the financial flow and make sure that money is not being improperly spent. They'll be able to make sure that CFMEU members get what other union members get, and that is a union that acts in their interests. After the number of times that we've heard those opposite say that they would be tough on the CFMEU, what I never expected was that at this moment the person who might be riding to the rescue of John Setka would be the Leader of the Opposition. There are two people. There are two sorts of people who want this legislation delayed. There are the CFMEU's lawyers and there are the Liberals and Nationals in the Senate, directed by the Leader of the Opposition. He might think that he was always tough on them because he used to come up and give really tough dixers. But I've never seen an outlaw motorcycle gang say, "Oh, I'm scared of the Dorothy Dixer," from the now Leader of the Opposition. What they would say, though, is they are scared if their business model is broken, and they know that this legislation breaks that business model. We are now down to half an hour before that debate starts in the Senate. The Leader of the Opposition has to decide whether he's true to the words that he's made a career of talking about, or whether he is about to become John Sekta's best friend.
And the member for Page will cease
the contrast couldn't be greater. On one side of the table we have someone who, within weeks of becoming Leader of his party, expelled John Sekta from the Labor Party, and the person sitting opposite him now wanting to see if he can be the saviour of the current leadership of the CFMEU. If he won't listen to reason, he should at least listen to people who are not on our side of politics but have made their positions clear. Danita Warren, CEO of Master Builders Australia, not a card-carrying member of the Labor Party, says, and I quote, "It's disappointing to date that the coalition are not listening to the industry. They're not listening to the people on the ground that are saying we want administration, not deregistration." John Davies from the Contractors Association refers to the fact that the delay is beginning to have tangible effects on the industry, both in terms of project outcomes and business operations. If they want to save the leadership of the CFMEU, it's on them.
Has concluded. Before I call the next member, I'd like to do some acknowledgements in the chamber. I inform the House that present at the gallery today is Dr Kong Bui AM, President of the Queensland chapter of the Vietnamese Community Australia, and also Federal and State presidents of the Vietnamese community in Australia. We have school students from Victory Lutheran College in Wodonga in the member for Indi's electorate, and students from the Sydney Montessori School in Guyama in the member for Cook's electorate. And we have the Deputy Premier and Treasurer of the State of Queensland, the Honourable Cameron Dick, in the gallery today. Perk of office. Give the call to the member for Riverina.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, of the more than 2,900 people issued visas from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone, primarily let in by the former Immigration Minister, the member for Scullin, have all of them been subjected to a biometric test and an in-person interview?
Call to the Prime Minister. Order.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. On biometric testing, there's something that the Director-General from Asia addressed as well on his insiders interview on Sunday. What we have done is to make sure that we work with our security agencies to keep Australians safe. That's what we do. And in terms of the result of that, on...
Order. The member for KC.
This morning, one of those people, Dr Mona Kaskeen, I listened to her on RN this morning. She's a Palestinian neurosurgeon who fled Gaza, who's now in Sydney. This is what she said about how she got to come here. The people who came from Gaza, they are seeking a good life for them and their children. They are very highly qualified people because many of them are doctors, engineers. They are people seeking a good life. We came here just to live in peace and to protect our family. I like Australia. I like living here. It's quiet, safe. My children feel safe here. The people from Gaza, they want to live safe and protect their family. They want to live in peace. Just like so many of the people who came under the former government from...
Look, the Prime Minister was answering directly the question with a case example about one of the people that he was asked about. I'm not sure how you could possibly ask a question of relevance on this, but I'll hear... So that's a key not to say that you're rising on the point of relevance, but I'll give you the tip.
Yes.
So the member for Wannon.
So it is relevant, Speaker, because, and it's, the question was, have all of them. Have all of them, not one, it was have all of them.
Leader of the House.
The question in its first part referred to the entire caseload, which makes a reference to a part of that caseload completely in order.
The Prime Minister wasn't talking about a visa from somewhere else or another person, but if you've asked a question specifically with the number about visas issued, of course it's going to be directly relevant with him talking about a case. Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I'm talking about a real human being. A real human being who's now here. That's right. What she went on to say, and that's what this is.
Order.
And that's what this is about. Exactly. Real human beings with real children and real families and real trauma and real tragedy. And the impact that that has had, whether it be the innocent lives that have been lost in Israel or the innocent lives that have been lost in Gaza, that has had a traumatic effect on everyone who is related to them here and on the communities, whether they be the Israeli community or the Palestinian community. And that is one of the reasons why we have been asked by those people who run our national security to lower the temperature, to think about what we do as political leaders. And the former Deputy Prime Minister knows I have the utmost respect for him. I was with him in his community, including with migrants, just a couple of weeks ago in Cowra. He was speaking to me about the migration, including people from, formerly from Afghanistan, who've settled there in central western New South Wales, who are good citizens. This is what
Prime Minister's
Dr. Kaskeen said today. Whoever crosses the border.
Order. The Prime Minister's time is good. Order. Do not need assistance with time because it will apply both sides when people are over in their questions. I don't think anyone wants that either. The Leader of the Opposition on point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I move that so much of standing and sessional orders be suspended as would prevent the Leader of the Opposition from moving the following motion forthwith.
No.
The
Leader of the Opposition, it goes side to side. So
the Prime Minister had concluded his answer, Mr Speaker.
I thought you were raising...
Nobody had sought the call.
On a point of order, it doesn't work like that. We are not going to go down this path. If you wish to raise a point of order, you can do so, but suspension, it goes side to side.
Mr Speaker, with respect, I wasn't seeking to make a point of order. You said that. I didn't seek the call for a point of order. I stood seeking the call. The honourable member opposite, no reflection on him, had not stood to seek the call. And, Mr Speaker, you recognise me as such, and I seek the call to suspend standing orders on that basis. Mr Speaker, I move that so much of standing and session orders...
Just pause a moment. We're going to deal with this. Just pause. Order. Members on my left. Order. Just get the Leader of the Opposition to resume a moment. We'll deal with this in an orderly way. Leader of the House.
Thanks, Speaker. Just speaking to the point of order. When you called the Leader of the Opposition, you specifically said on a point of order. It was quite clear to the Leader of the Opposition that he was getting the call if it was on a point of order. It has always been the case with the alternating call that if you want to move a suspension, you wait until it is the opposition side, the non-government benches, is getting the call. It's been that way for a long time. In opposition, of course, opposition members often want to do it straight away, but that has always been the procedure. But it is also the case, as we shouldn't let go of, if someone's rising on a point of order, they get the call for that. But if it's a suspension, it's treated the same way as the concept of questions alternating side to side.
Yes. Yep.
Mr Speaker, on a point of order, and again with respect to the Leader of the House, that is not practice in relation to the way in which the standing orders have been enforced and operate in this chamber. The call given by the Speaker to somebody seeking the call, whether it's for a suspension of standing orders or for a point otherwise, has been the long-standing practice of Speakers past, of current and past, and I think you should adhere to that, Mr Speaker.
Yeah. The difficulty I'm in, on the similar point of order, the member for Warringah.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To assist the House, the member for Macnamara was on his feet seeking the call in accordance with. But should I say...
Order. Members on my left, do not interject on the member for Warringah. Okay? The member for Warringah on a point of order.
I would note that it is a practice of the Speaker to, in respect of the position of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, to always give them the call preferential to anyone else in the chamber because they are at the table. If the Leader of the Opposition is going to abandon the practice of respecting that he is given the call on an assumption of a point of order, then I would respectfully submit that there can no longer be a precedence of those at the table over other members of the House in seeking the call, because if not, it is a preferential treatment. And so the application of the standing orders should be equal to all in this place. There shouldn't be exceptions for the Leader of the Opposition.
I want to deal with this. I like to treat everyone fairly and give everyone a fair go. Just as when it was the government's turn for a question, the Leader wanted to raise the point about a statement. If I was to simply worry about who was moving suspensions, I'd never acknowledge when it was the government's time. So I have to have that flexibility of allowing that. So the member for Warringah is correct. Out of respect for the Leader and the Deputy Leader, they do get the call because of the high office that they hold. It is not right, it's not fair for the person on this side who then wishes the question. So we're just going to move forward now, and I'll give the call to the honourable member for McNamara.
Very kind of you, Speaker. It is a good one. My question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to ease cost of living pressures on students and build a better and fairer education system?
Give the call to the Minister for Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the magnificent member for McNamara for his question. This morning I introduced legislation to wipe $3 billion of student debt for more than 3 million Australians, including more than 27,000 people in the member for McNamara's electorate. As members know, I asked the University Accord team for advice on this, and they advised that we should set indexation at either inflation or wages, whatever is lowest. And we're doing that and going further than that. We're backdating it to last year. In other words, wiping out what happened last year and making sure that it never happens again. For someone with an average HECS debt of, say, 26 grand, it means it'll cut their debt by about $1,200. Someone with a HECS debt of about $45,000, it'll cut their debt by about $2,000. So it's an important reform to make HECS fairer. But that's not the only thing the bill does, Mr. Speaker. The legislation also establishes, for the first time ever, paid prac. For the first time ever, the Commonwealth Government will provide financial support for teaching students, nursing students, midwifery students and social work students while they do their practical training. These are people who've signed up to do some of the most important jobs in this country, people who are going to help educate our children, look after us when we're sick or when we're old, support women in domestic violence refuges. And a big part of becoming a teacher or a nurse or a social worker is that practical training. Sometimes they have to give up their part-time job to do it. So this is a bit of practical help to do your practical training. And, Mr. Speaker, this legislation also uncaps funding for fee-free university-ready courses. These are the short courses that act as a bridge between school and uni that help to give you the skills you need to do a university degree. And the advice from my department that this has the potential to double the number of people doing these courses by the end of next decade. Wiping HECS debt, paid prac and fee-free university courses, they help with the cost of degrees, they help with the cost of living, and most importantly, they help with the cost of young people missing out on the chance to go to university in the first place. In particular, young people from poor families, young people from the outer suburbs, young people from the regions and from the bush. And it's just one part of the reforms that we're making to build a better and a fairer education system.
Give a call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that so much of standing and sessional orders be suspended as would prevent the Leader of the Opposition from moving the following motion forthwith. That this House A notes that the Prime Minister has purported to quote statements made by the Director-General of ASIO in a recent interview on Insiders. B notes that the purported quote specifically omits key words. C considers that this constitutes a deliberate misleading of this House. And D calls on the Prime Minister to apologise to this House. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has no shame.
Order.
He's misled the House and he should apologise. He's made our country less safe.
Order. I want to hear from the Leader of the House.
Under Standing Order 47E, I require the debate to take place after the MPI.
Call to the honourable member for Hawke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Early Childhood Education. Why is it important to invest in the early childhood education and care workforce? What has been the response to the Albanese government's investment in this sector?
Give a call to the Minister for Early Childhood Education and the Minister for Youth.
Very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the fantastic member for Hawke for his question. I want to acknowledge his commitment and his advocacy for early childhood education and care workers in his electorate. Now, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the chamber, we recognise the transformative benefits of early childhood education. During that crucial period in a child's first 5 years of their life, where 90% of brain development occurs. Our skilled early childhood educators and teachers support that development. They support children's development through play-based learning and in those important years before school. And we've just wrapped up Early Learning Matters Week, which showcased play-based learning and the importance that that has in the formation of child development. However, we also know that for too long this work has been undervalued, and that's why our historic announcement of a 15% pay rise across the early childhood education sector is incredibly important. Now, this pay rise means that by the end of this year, an early childhood educator, around 200,000 of them right across Australia, will get an extra at least $100 in their pay packet. By the end of next year, that'll be at least $150. Now, Sam Page, my dear friend and the CEO of Early Learning Australia, said this. She said that this announcement marks a pivotal moment for the early childhood education and care sector, underscoring the importance of investing in the workforce that supports the growth, learning and development of Australia's children. And while those opposite might not understand this, parents, grandparents and caregivers do. They know what these workers do for their children. They see their children flourish in early childhood education. And in response to our announcement, Dr Carolyn Grosser-Barlow, the CEO of the Front Project, she had this to say. She said, parents and caregivers understand that better pay is not only fair, but also crucial for attracting and retaining quality educators who are committed to the long-term development of their children. Mr Speaker, I want to finish with the words of Sunitha. She's an early childhood educator, and she says, we're having all educators leaving in the past few years because the pay is so low, and now they'll be coming back. Already they've been contacting me, and they've been saying that we are coming back. That's a great win. Sunitha is right. This is a great win. It's a win for workers, it's a win for children, it's a win for our economy, and, Mr Speaker, it's a win for our country.
Give a call to the honourable member for Childcare.
The Minister for Immigration and Home Affairs. The Nguyen family of Bathurst are much loved and highly respected in our local community. They run the Annam Vietnamese restaurant, which is a Bathurst institution, and they've made a very significant contribution to Bathurst and our region. Through no fault of their own, they've had their visas knocked back, and over 19,000 people have signed a petition to have them stay in Australia. Minister, their case is now on your desk. Will you support this family in their quest to stay in Bathurst and Australia?
Call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I have some familiarity with the case. I don't know all the details of it, but as I understand it, through no fault of their own, the person who was sponsoring them lost the right to sponsor, and there's a challenge there. I'd encourage the member even today, straight after question time, directly to me with a representation. I'll work out with the Assistant Minister which of us will work with the department, and you'll be informed as to who it is. But certainly the issues, as you've raised, appear, and as I understand the case from what I've seen initially, is something where the individuals concerned don't appear to be, at this stage with the information I have, don't appear to be at fault in terms of the circumstances that have arisen. That doesn't mean that if there may be specific rules, it simply can't be bent. That might be the case. But as with all representations, if you make the representation, we'll get departmental advice and have a look at it for you.
Call to the honourable member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Minister for Health. After a decade of cuts and neglect, how is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare and bulk billing? Are there any threats that would make it harder for Australians to see a bulk billed doctor?
Good question. Call to the Minister for Health and Aged Care.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Gilmore for her question. During the break, we visited the urgent care clinic and the new Headspace service at Bateman's Bay, as well as a terrific endometriosis clinic in Milton, and I thank her for that. She is an absolutely terrific advocate for better health care, particularly in regional Australia, Mr Speaker. She knows that when we came to government, general practice in particular was under huge pressure after this decade of cuts and neglect to Medicare, and bulk billing particularly was in freefall. The member for Gilmore, along with the rest of the Labor team, promised to turn this around, Mr Speaker, and we've been busy delivering on that promise. This Treasurer has delivered the 2 biggest increases to the Medicare rebate in 30 years. In just 2 budgets, this Treasurer delivered a bigger increase to Medicare than those opposite managed in 9 budgets, Mr Speaker. And in addition, we've tripled the bulk billing incentive for GP visits. In the member for Gilmore's electorate, for example, that's lifted the Medicare rebate paid to a GP for a standard consult by 50%. By half, Mr Speaker. And in the 8 months since that record investment took effect, Mr Speaker, we've seen bulk billing increase in every single state and territory, a system that under those opposite was in free fall has finally started to turn around, Mr Speaker. Since November, that has delivered an additional 3 million free visits to the doctor, 900,000 in June alone, more than 900,000 in May alone, Mr Speaker. And the biggest increases to bulk billing have been in regional and rural Australia. I'm pleased to report that in the member for Gilmore's electorate, bulk billing is up by more than 5% in just 8 months. Now, well over 4 out of every 5 GP visits in the member for Gilmore's electorate is fully bulk billed, in no small effort due to her advocacy for better health care. Along with urgent care clinics and cheaper medicines, Mr Speaker, more bulk billing is a crucial part of our plan to strengthen Medicare, to make it easier to see a doctor and to help Australians with the rising cost of health care. And these measures are making a real difference to ordinary Australians, Mr Speaker. But we know it's still tough out there, and we know we need to do more. We're determined to do more, Mr Speaker, but we also know that this progress is under real threat from those opposite. The Shadow Treasurer confirmed again this week he doesn't support our record investment in bulk billing. And as for the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Speaker, you just have to look at his record to get a hint of what he would do if he got his hands on Medicare again. He famously said that there were too many free Medicare services before he tried to abolish bulk billing altogether and cut $50 billion from hospitals. No wonder, Mr Speaker, Australia's doctor voted this man the worst health minister in the history of Medicare.
Order. The House comes to order. Hear the member for Barara.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, of the 2,900 people issued with visitor visas from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone, how many applicants have had their biometric data checked against Israeli government records on known Hamas members or sympathisers and those known or suspected to have participated on the 7th of October terror attacks?
The Prime Minister has... All right, we might just... Member for Moreton can stay where he is. The member for Brower, I'm just going to ask you to repeat the full question again.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, of the 2,900 people issued with visitor visas from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone, how many applicants have had their biometric data checked against Israeli government records on known Hamas members or sympathisers, or those known or suspected to have participated in the 7 October terrorist attacks?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I'm asked a question about Australia. I'm asked a question as well about Israel's database as well, which I certainly don't think I'm in a position to answer. It is a fact that one of the things that we don't do, as I said to a previous question, is go through all of the detail of our security arrangements, and the member would understand why that's the case. I don't think Israel does that either, by the way, just as a matter of fact. Let me just say this. I spoke before about Dr Mona Kaskin. She has said, to quote her this morning in that interview, whoever crosses the border into Egypt, they must not be political personnel from Hamas because they're not allowed to cross the border. That is what she had to say about her own experience. Let's be very clear about what has occurred here. The Leader of the Opposition went to welcome Olympians home, did an interview, and once again made up a policy. It didn't go to shadow cabinet, didn't go to their caucus, no process whatsoever, just like so many other issues that have occurred. And then the worst thing about that is that the Leader of the Opposition should know better. He should know also...
Order. The member for Barrow was on his feet, so I'll just take his point of order.
Mr Speaker, this is a point of order on relevance. The Prime Minister was asked a question about processes by which the Australian government checks data against Israeli government records, not about announcements made by the Leader of the Opposition.
The issue I raised on Monday about contrast on policies still applies, so the Prime Minister has been detailed about that. For the remainder of his answer, he won't be able to talk entirely about the opposition's policies, but of course he is able to, as former speakers have determined, to compare and contrast policies.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I answered the member for Barrowa's question up front already. But we know that our security agencies do their job in a diligent way. The honourable member would know, as a former, at least, Shadow Attorney General, that I don't know if he served on the National Security Committee or not, but he would know about the arrangements that we have in place for security with other agencies. If he wants me to go down the track of talking about the arrangements that we have with our Five Eyes partners, with other governments, that is just an extraordinary question for him to expect, frankly. What we do is we make sure that our priority is to keep Australians safe. I have confidence in our security agencies. I would hope that the member does as well.
Call to the honourable member for Moreton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering cost of living relief to Australians, and are there any threats to this relief being delivered?
Give a call to the Minister for Social Services.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Moreton for that question. And like the member for Moreton, every single member in the Albanese government is absolutely committed to delivering cost of living relief for every single Australian. Now, we understand that people are under pressure, and that's why we are delivering responsible cost of living relief. Every Australian taxpayer is keeping more of what they earn because of Labor's tax cuts. Of course, we have frozen the cost of PBS medicines, and the $300 energy relief is now rolling out in terms of energy bill relief. Of course, eligible families with newborns are benefiting from an extra 2 weeks of paid parental leave. And we are continuing to freeze the Social Security deeming rates for another year so that pensioners can keep more money in their pockets. And from the 20th of September, we will deliver an increase to the maximum rates of Commonwealth rental assistance by a further 10%. Now, on that same day, regular indexation will apply to rent assistance, pensioners and other payments to provide extra financial support. Now, Mr Speaker, I've been asked if there are any threats to that relief. Now, I would assume that indexation of pensions and other payments would be supported right across the House. But unfortunately, we've now found out that those opposite clearly do not support this. Just a few months ago, the member for Hume went on the ABC and characterised this indexation arrangement as unrestrained spending that he was going to rein in. Now, I thought maybe he didn't understand. He was proposing a cut to the pension.
Order.
But this week we've seen that dynamic duo, the member for Hume and Senator Hume, double down on this criticism. It is now clear that the member for Hume, backed by Senator Hume, are opposing regular indexation increases. Now, of course, nobody should be surprised because those opposite have form. When the Liberals were last in government, they made a lot of cuts. They cut the pension, they cut family payments, and now the member for Hume needs to come clean. If he was ever Treasurer, how much would he cut the pension? Of course, those opposite have nothing positive to offer. The Leader of the Opposition wants higher power prices, higher grocery prices, higher housing prices, higher taxes, lower wages, and now he wants to cut the pension. It is only Labor that can be trusted to get things done and deliver meaningful cost of living relief.
Order. Give a call to the honourable member for Clark.
Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, a succession of federal governments, LNP and Labor, have a shameful history of paying lip service to the recommendations of royal commissions. Just look at the critical reaction to your government's response to the Disability Royal Commission, and we're still waiting for a government, any government, to act on the Aboriginal Deaths in Custody Royal Commission. So, with the Veterans Royal Commission about to drop, will you commit to urgently implement all of its recommendations?
Give a call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Of course, we haven't seen the recommendations of the Royal Commission, so it's a bit hard to comment specifically on them. But we, of course, in terms of the spirit of the Royal Commission that we supported being established, we'll give proper consideration to all of them, as I'm sure will other members of this parliament. Veteran suicide is indeed a national tragedy, and we are taking the Royal Commission into defence and veteran suicide extremely seriously, which is why we've been prepared to provide it with additional resources so that they could hear from more veterans. It's why we responded very quickly to the Royal Commission's interim report and why we've now taken action on each of the recommendations of that report. Every one of them we have taken actions on. One of the recommendations of the report was to fix the veteran compensation claims backlog. When we came to government, the department was chronically underfunded and under-resourced. And the member for Clare, when he was the minister, made that very clear in critiquing his own government's budget, you might recall. In our very first budget, we funded 500 additional staff to get through that backlog. It was eliminated a month before the deadline that had been set by the Royal Commission. Since we received the interim report, the Minister for Veterans Affairs has been working with the veteran community to deliver on the first recommendation of the Royal Commission's interim report to simplify and harmonise veteran compensation legislation. The Minister introduced that legislation to the Parliament here in July. We're committed to doing what it takes to improve outcomes for the defence and veteran community, which is why we've established things like Veterans Hubs so that people can get all of those services at just one-stop shop, which is why we've included things in the Housing Australia Future Fund, had a component there for veterans as well. We do thank every person who has contributed to the work of the Royal Commission. For those particularly who've had the bravery to share their personal stories. This can be really tough for people to relive those things, but they have done that not just to help themselves but to help their fellow veterans and those who will come after them, and I pay tribute to them. We'll receive the report next month. My understanding is we'll welcome the report, but we are already working, we're not waiting, to deliver a better future for defence personnel, for veterans and, importantly, for their families as well.
Call to the honourable member for Lyons.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. What actions is the Albanese Labor government taking to support the continuation of regional flights through the REX administration process?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for Lyons for the question. I know that he and every single regional MP who is in this place and those senators in the other place that represent regional areas as well know how important aviation is to regional Australia, and also know that REX plays a significant role in that. The announcement that REX has gone into voluntary administration has of course caused uncertainty for regional communities that rely on their services. Since REX went into voluntary administration, my department has been working closely with the administrators to assess the situation and the administrators' plans for the continuation of services in regional communities. As I said from the outset of this process, we all want to see a strong future for regional aviation, and we are leaving all options on the table. To support the continuation of regional flights, the Australian Government is guaranteeing regional flight bookings for Rex customers for tickets purchased after the administration period began. That means that travellers can book regional flights on Rex throughout the voluntary administration process with confidence that they will either fly or get their money back. This is not a Commonwealth injection of funds into Rex or the administrators. It is a guarantee for bookings made after the airline entered into voluntary administration. The guarantee will only be triggered if a service is cancelled and where no alternate service has been delivered and no refund. If the guarantee is triggered, affected customers will receive a refund directly from their credit card merchant or travel booking provider, backed by the government guarantee. Any drawdown of the guarantee is required to be repaid by the administrators. The guarantee applies to any Rex regional flight bookings made after Rex entered voluntary administration from 9:31 p.m. on Tuesday the 30th of July 2024. This guarantee is about assuring customers and communities that they can and should continue booking regional flights with Rex, flights that allow them to stay connected with their family, their friends, their healthcare and other services, while also helping to maintain regional aviation in Australia. It's a message very clearly to regional Australia. We know how important reliable air services are to you. We are not going to allow your communities to be left behind, and to say to members of the public, this guarantee does mean you can continue to book on Rex flights and should do so during the period of voluntary administration, and that guarantee allows some confidence about that.
Yeah. Call to the honourable member for Wannon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Albanese government, primarily under Minister Giles, has issued more than 2,900 visas to individuals from the Gaza war zone since the October 7 atrocity. Were all the individuals referred to ASIO for security checks, or was it only where criteria are hit?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for his question. I refer to my previous answers where I've indicated that what we do is we have in place appropriate arrangements to secure our national security and to keep people safe. That is what we do. That is what the ASIO Director-General has expressed his confidence in the system. That is something that he did, not just in the media conference that we held, but on the 7:30 report and on the Insiders program. We work regularly and closely with our security agencies. We take their advice. And if those opposite don't have confidence in the security agencies or in the Director-General, they should say so.
Order. The member for Fairfax. Give the call to the honourable member for Macarthur.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting local government, and how does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Minister.
I thank the member for Macarthur for his question, a staunch advocate for the local government sector, many of whom I met with in his office, and I know he knows the value of good governance too. Everyone in this place knows that I'm a champion for local government. They are the closest level of government to our communities, and they provide so many vital services. On this side of the House, we back that. We've brought them back to the table of the National Cabinet, we've re-established the Council of Local Governments, and we've provided significant boosts in road funding, including progressively doubling roads to recovery. And that's what happens when you have a Labor government, because local government is in every town, in every village, in every city, right across the country. And the best solutions are locally led, including the best candidates in local government. But yesterday we saw some shocking news, because across New South Wales, dozens of Liberal candidates no longer can run in the local council elections in September 14. Chaos, you might think. Well, that's what happens when you've got a New South Wales Liberal Party failing to do the one job they have, which was lodge a form on time. Could you believe that? One job, Mr Speaker, and they failed at it. Unfathomable. And from those opposite, Mr Speaker, they want us to believe, they want the Australian people to believe that they can run a country when they can't even lodge a form. And yet they think the Australian people will fall for a nuclear plan. They're going to build them and run them, but they can't lodge a form. And what a shame it is for all those local candidates who actually just wanted to represent their communities. But as usual, we've seen the constant mismanagement that is, become synonymous with those opposite. First it was colour-coded spreadsheets, then it was regional grants for the North Sydney pool, and we heard yesterday North Sydney cares for regional and rural Australia. But remember, the back in black mugs came. They just missed the bit where they actually got the budget back in black. Missed it by this much, I think it was. It's a pattern of chaos and mismanagement from those opposite. How can they run a country when they can't even get a nomination in? But can I make a suggestion just before I go? Maybe listen to the former Liberal Mayor of Lane Cove. He was asked by Kenny Heatley on Sky News this question: what does this say about the state of the Liberal Party if they can't even get their nomination forms in before the cut-off? Scott Bennison, current Mayor of Lane Cove, he's about to be the former Mayor because the Liberals didn't pre-select him, now he's running as an independent. He said they probably shouldn't be in government if they can't get their forms in. They shouldn't manage anything. If I could just make a suggestion, make sure you get your federal nominations in soon.
Order. Members on my right will cease clapping. Order. I'd like to hear from the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, it is reported that between 40 to 75% of people in the Gaza war zone support listed terrorist organisation Hamas. Is it the government's policy that sympathy for Hamas is not grounds for visa refusal or cancellation?
No, members on my right, I couldn't hear the question. I could not hear the question. The way this works is both sides. I'm just going to ask the member to repeat the question. I've got to hear the question so I can make decisions during the question. So the member for Hughes will start her question again. The members on my right will remain silent.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, it is reported that between 40 to 75% of people in the Gaza war zone support listed terrorist organisation Hamas. Is it the government's policy that sympathy for Hamas is not grounds for visa refusal or cancellation?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for Hughes for her question, and I just say to the member for Hughes, I hope you have better pollsters than people who come to you and say it's somewhere between 40 and 75. because that is an extraordinary question to ask.
Margin of error.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. In seriousness, how you poll Gaza at the moment. Do you have a TV? Have a look at what has happened to Gaza. The idea that there is polling going on in Gaza at the moment, just really, in order to make a point, in order to ask a question here. I mean, we have issues in this country of dealing with the global impact of inflation, cost of living pressures, housing, education. We had a report this week about NAPLAN and about students falling behind.
The Prime Minister will pause and I'll hear from the Leader of the Opposition on point of order.
Well, Mr Speaker, the question was, is it the government's policy that sympathy for Hamas is not grounds for visa refusal or cancellation? It was the question. The Prime Minister's got this...
Resume your seat. Look, just it's abuse of the point of order, and the Leader of the Opposition knows that. Order. I hear from the Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, I can understand why the Leader of the Opposition is wanting to leave out the first half of the question when he's making that reference, but it was given, it was stated, and it significantly broadens any concept of the relevance rule.
Order. The Prime Minister is being relevant, but the 40 to 75% figure is obviously, I don't know where that figure has come from. I'm not sure where the member for Hughes has got that figure from, but obviously that's going to be contested, perhaps by the Prime Minister in his answer. There wasn't a source regarding where that figure was, so obviously in the answer to the question it's going to be quite broad, but I'll just make sure the Prime Minister is being directly relevant to the question.
Mr Speaker, I was asked about opinion polls in Gaza, and I was referring to...
Order. Order.
I absolutely was. And,
Order. The member for Fairfax and the member for Hume are just going to remain silent.
And the fact is that what Australians are concerned about at the moment is education, is health, is cost of living, all those things that those people opposite have refused to raise this week. What they also don't want to see, as Director General Burgess has warned about, is social division that we have been warned about. They want to see the temperature taken down in this debate, the temperature right across the board. Australia is not a direct participant in this conflict. No matter how much some people in political life try to put us at the centre of it. That is something that those opposite, sometimes from time to time, have said they agree with when they're critical of minor parties. And yet, the reason why I have been critical of those minor parties is that that has been divisive, some of that conduct. But so too is the sort of division and the attempts that we've seen since the Olympic welcome home ceremony by those opposite.
The Prime Minister's time has concluded. Order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the member for Corangamite.
My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Why is it important that we continue the rollout of renewable energy backed up by batteries? What obstacles stand in the way, and what policies has the government rejected?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thanks very much indeed, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the member for Corangamite. It's important we keep going with the plan to roll out renewables backed by batteries, because that's what the experts tell us is the least cost way to transition our energy system. Renewables backed by batteries, backed by gas peaking, backed by storage and transmission, Mr Speaker. That's what the experts say. Those opposite have a different view. But I'm pleased to tell the member for Corangamite and the House that in the first 7 months of this year, 2.8 gigawatts worth of big batteries have begun construction. That's as big as our largest coal-fired power station, backing up renewable energy and backing up with storage, Mr Speaker. And yesterday, the energy company AGL announced investments in batteries of up to 8 gigawatts. 8 gigawatts of investment in batteries by AGL. And AGL also said yesterday, in response to questions, nuclear is not part of our plans nor our strategy. We can't sit around and wait for nuclear. The rationale for that is both cost and time to get there. Now, of course, that's important because AGL owns the Liddell site, where those opposite want to put a nuclear power station. The landlord says no, Mr Speaker. Their policy has failed at the first hurdle. Now, All we've seen from the opposition is the announcement of 7 sites. We've seen no further detail, but as the House knows, I always want to be fair to those opposite. And a couple of weeks ago, we did start to see detail. The member for Fairfax, the Shadow Minister, told the Australian he had a big speech coming up, and he told the Australian, and the headline was, "Ted O'Brien sets out long-term plan for uranium enrichment industry." And there were lots of quotes in the article about what he would say at his speech in Adelaide later that next day. Now, I've read the speech and watched it. Someone had to. Not many people do, Mr Speaker, but I do. And I'm sorry to tell the House, none of the quotes that the member for Fairfax told the Australian appeared in the actual speech, which I tabled for the House, Mr Speaker.
Order.
It was an announcement with a very short half-life.
The Minister will pause. The manager on a point of.
The rules on props are very well known. The minister is cynically flouting the rules, and he should be brought back to compliance with the standing orders.
Order. The Leader of the House.
Just to the point of order, when a minister is tabling the document, you have to hold the document up to be able to table it.
Yes, but the minister was also waving it around beforehand. So to assist the House, you don't need to wave it around. You just need to simply table it, which does not mean a waving of a document. I thank the manager.
I also tabled the honourable member's speech, which contained
The minister has the call.
I also tabled the speech by the honourable member, which contained none of the quotes. It was such a long-term plan it didn't even make the speech, Mr Speaker. I'm not sure what happened. It's possible the member for Fairfax told the Australian before he told the Leader of the Opposition, and the Leader of the Opposition didn't approve the announcement of a uranium enrichment industry for Australia, Mr Speaker. Maybe the Leader of the Opposition pulled the rug out from under the member for Fairfax. We wouldn't know. We do know that those opposite couldn't organise a barbecue at Bunnings, Mr Speaker. They say they're going to roll out reactors. They can't even roll out candidates for local government. They say they're going to have nuclear reactors by a deadline of 2035. They couldn't even meet a deadline of 12 o'clock on Tuesday, Mr Speaker. This is the alternative government of Australia who says they have an energy plan for Australia, and what they have, Mr Speaker, is a complete mess which doesn't survive contact with reality, and that's why the Leader of the Opposition is so risky for our country.
Call to him for Fadden.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, the Department of Home Affairs told Senate estimates on 28 May that as of the 31st of March 2024, 39 visitor visas from individuals from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone were cancelled, but 12 of those cancellation decisions were later revoked. Prime Minister, as of today, how many visas from individuals from the Gaza war zone have been cancelled since the 7th of October? And were any of the visas cancelled following additional security checks?
Order. Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much. We, of course, take the same advice from the same security agencies, even the same security personnel, as the former government did. We have confidence in our security and law enforcement agencies to do their job. And one of the things that they do is do it on an ongoing basis. We don't discuss all of the methods that our agencies use to determine if someone is a national security risk for obvious reasons. We encourage the Director-General of ASIO to directly engage so as to depoliticise these issues. That's why the Director-General of ASIO goes onto TV, not because it's something that is in his wish list of wanting to tick off, but because it's the right thing to do, because it is consistent with his view about the need to lower the temperature in this country. And if those opposite think that the circumstances are that we don't need to lower the temperature, then they can continue down this cul-de-sac. They can continue down there. But I've got to say that we want to ensure the security of our nation is prioritised, not a news grab, not a headline, the security of our nation. But of course we've seen the form in this before, the criticism of Malcolm Fraser for making what was called a mistake of bringing Lebanese refugees to Australia. in response to the 1976 Civil War, the claim that Victorians were scared to go out due to African gang violence, and the incorrectly blaming the death of a teenager on such gangs in a bid to score a point.
Order.
The cruel
Members on
war
my right.
against the Biloela
Members on my
family,
left.
comparing their children to anchor babies. The catching of a senior member of the then government on a hot mic making jokes about Pacific nations facing rising sea levels.
Order.
It's funny, is it, mate? Funny, is it, mate?
Order.
I still think it's hilarious. Yeah.
The Assistant Treasurer will cease
suggesting
rejecting.
That the now Defence Minister was the choice of China during the last election
Order.
campaign.
Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? The manager on a point of order.
Well, the point of order is relevance, Mr Speaker. It was a tight question about a number of visas from individuals from the Gaza war zone that have been cancelled since the 7th of October. He should answer that. He's equivocated and failed to do that. And if he's got nothing more to say, he should sit down.
Order. Order. No, there's no commentary needed when someone approaches the dispatch box on either side. The Deputy Leader of the House.
Thank you, Speaker. The Manager of Opposition Business continues to raise this point of order. He's something of a serial offender of this. It is quite clear in the standing orders and in practice that a minister, and certainly the Prime Minister, has the right to compare and contrast. He has answered the question. What he is doing now is he is comparing and contrasting.
The Prime Minister has 19 seconds remaining in his answer, and he shall remain directly relevant.
Yeah, it's important to have context, and the context is this bloke has 20 years of form.
Give a call to the honourable member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for the Environment and Water. How is the government's Future Made in Australia plan accelerating the approval of renewable energy projects? How will these projects make energy cleaner and cheaper for all Australians? And what approaches has the government ruled out and why?
Call to the Minister for the Environment and Water.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Bennelong for his question. I know that he and his constituents are huge supporters of the transition to renewable energy in this country and of a future made in Australia. The energy transition is real. It's happening right now. You see it in the 25% increase in renewable energy in our electricity grid. You see it in the faster approvals for renewable energy projects and the cheaper, cleaner energy entering our grid. You see it in the 55 projects that we've ticked off so far, the 3 million homes that will be supported with that cleaner, cheaper, renewable energy. You see it in the 136 projects that are in the pipeline. Just a couple that I've ticked off recently. The Palmer Wind Farm in South Australia, enough to power 144,000 homes. That project, right place, it took 9 weeks for that tick-off to come through. Just 9 weeks. Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone, enough to power 1.8 million homes. 5,000 jobs during peak construction. That renewable energy future is being built right now. And in the meanwhile, right now, immediately, we're offering $300 energy bill relief for Australian households, $350 for small businesses. What is the contrast? The contrast from those opposite, 9 years of delay and inaction, 9 years of denial. They were told 24 coal-fired power stations were closing on their watch. Where was the plan for the replacement electricity generation? Where was the plan for the workers? And now, what is their plan for electricity? Their plan is to spend $600 billion of taxpayers' money that could be spent on hospitals, could be spent on roads, could be spent on schools. No, they're going to spend that on nuclear reactors so we can have electricity in 20 years' time. Their plan for cheaper energy now will deliver in 20 years' time. What you have as a contrast between those opposite and those on this side is a 9-year go slow versus 9-week approvals. And by the way, if those opposite want to see more faster approvals for housing, for critical minerals, for all of those things that we need to see to create jobs and wealth in this country, then they should be backing our environmental law reforms in the Senate. Better protections for nature, faster, clearer decisions for business.
Call to the Prime Minister.
Was it going to be your first?
Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
Okay. If it was his first, Mr Speaker, I was going to give him a crack, but it's not. I ask further questions be placed on the notice paper.